Four siblings sat in the old living room, surrounded by dusty furniture, faded curtains, and memories that felt too heavy to speak about. Sade was the first to break the silence. It's been 5 years since Mama died, and this is the first time we're all here together. Tunde leaned back on the wooden chair that creaked under his weight. I almost didn't come. The bus from Lagos broke down twice. That alone felt like a sign. Tunde worked as a bus driver in Lagos. He left home every morning before sunrise and returned late at night, navigating through traffic and chaos. His back hurt from sitting too long, and his hands were rough from gripping the steering wheel all day. He had a wife and 3 children, and every month he struggled to pay school fees. Just last week, his bus had been involved in a minor accident, and the bus owner threatened to sack him if he made one more mistake. He scratched his neck and sighed. Even this chair feels like it's judging me. Dupe sat cross-legged on the floor, staring at the cracks in the wall. She glanced briefly at an old family photo on the shelf, one of her and Mama laughing in the kitchen. Her chest tightened. My landlord increased my rent again last month. I begged, but he said life is hard for everyone. I had to borrow money, again. Dupe worked as a cleaner in a private school in Ibadan. Every morning, she woke up before dawn to catch the first bus and sweep the classrooms before the students arrived. It was tiring, thankless work, and the pay was barely enough. Last term, the school slashed her salary because enrollment dropped, and she hadn't been paid in 2 months. She sometimes stayed behind after work to sell soft drinks outside the gate, just to make extra cash. Still, it never felt like enough. Kunla, the second oldest, rubbed his face with both hands. Same old story. Last week someone stole all the yams I was selling at the market, every single one. I haven't recovered. Kunli had a small stall in the bustling market of Ilorin. He sold yams, tomatoes, and vegetables, whatever was in season. It wasn't much, but it fed his wife and 2 children. He had taken a loan from a friend to buy that batch of yams, hoping to flip it for profit. But thieves broke into the market one night and cleared out several stalls, including his. The market authorities didn't care. Now he was in debt, and his wife had been threatening to leave if things didn't get better soon. Sade wrapped her arms around herself. Even when we get close to something good, it falls apart. I finally got a job that paid well last year, then I got sick. Couldn't work for 3 months. They replaced me without blinking. Sade lived in Abeokuta with her husband and 2 young daughters. She had worked as a receptionist at a small travel agency. The job was decent, and for once it seemed like life was turning around. Then she fell ill, typhoid and malaria combined. She was hospitalized, and the agency replaced her without notice. Her husband's work as a carpenter was not enough to cover their rent and food, and their children had been sent home from school more than once for unpaid fees. They had all come from different cities, different lives, but the same story, misfortune. A small cockroach crawled across the wall, and Dupe lazily flicked her sandal at it without moving from her spot. They sat in silence again. The air felt heavier now. We've all been through a lot, Kunle said softly, and maybe it's time we sit down as a family and talk about how to move forward. Mama and Papa are gone. It's just us now. Yes, Tundi agreed. We're not children anymore. If something is wrong, we have to fix it together. There was a pause. Then Sade looked up thoughtfully. Do you think maybe we should talk to Aunty Bose? Her voice was quiet, almost hesitant. Dupe frowned. It's been a while since we spoke to her. She always gave Mama advice, Sade added. She knows things, family things. Maybe she can help us understand what's going on, why everything always falls apart. Tunde stood up and pulled out his phone. Let me call her. The others watched as he stepped outside. The village was quiet, with only the sound of crickets and the occasional rustling of leaves. It felt far from the madness of the cities they came from, but their problems had followed them here. When he returned, he said, She's coming tomorrow morning. Did she say anything? Dupe asked. No, Tunde replied. Just that she'll be here early. Aunty Bose arrived the next morning. She looked a little tired from the journey, but her face lit up when she saw the siblings waiting for her at the front of the family house. There were warm hugs, a few tears, and soft smiles. It had been a long time. The house, though old and worn, seemed to come alive with her presence. She moved through the familiar walls, nodding at things that hadn't changed and frowning at others that had. Sade offered to make her something to drink, and together they walked into the kitchen. As Aunty Bose stepped inside, her eyes moved around the kitchen slowly. Then she stopped. Her gaze locked on the empty corner shelf by the window. Her expression changed, her brow furrowed. "Where's the pot?" she asked softly. Sade looked confused. "Which pot, Auntie?" "The clay pot, the brown one that always sat here," Aunty Bose said, pointing to the empty spot on the wooden shelf. Tunde, who had been walking past, heard the question and paused. "Ah, that one?" he said, rubbing the back of his neck. "I broke it a few years ago. It was already cracked, and we were clearing out old stuff from the house. We didn't think it was important." Aunty Bose went still. Her face fell in shock. "You broke it?" she whispered. Tunde looked surprised at her reaction. "Yes. I didn't think it was a big deal. It was—" Without saying another word, she turned around and walked straight to the living room. "Everyone, come and sit down," she called, her voice firm. The siblings followed her, concerned. They sat around her in silence. She lowered herself into a chair, took a deep breath, and looked at each of them. That clay pot. It was not just any pot. It was passed down from generation to generation in our family. It was a sacred gift given to your mother by my mother, and before her it belonged to our grandmother and her mother before that. That pot carried a blessing. It was never meant to be touched carelessly, let alone broken. They stared at her, stunned. "We had no idea," Sade said quietly. "Mama never mentioned it." Aunty Bose looked at them, almost in disbelief. "I thought she told you," she said softly. "I truly believe she told you the story before she died. If I'd known she didn't, I would have come earlier. I would have warned you." "What was the pot for?" Kunle finally asked. Aunty Bose sighed. "It's a long story, one you need to hear, but not right now. Rest, eat. Tonight I'll tell you everything. You must understand what has been lost, and why it matters." They nodded quietly, knowing that whatever Aunty Bose had to say that evening would change everything. Dinner had been quiet. Too quiet. The siblings sat around the old dining table, picking at the food Dupe had prepared. The stew was rich and the yam was soft, but no one really tasted it. And the mood? Well, it was somewhere between awkward silence and quiet panic. They didn't say it out loud, but the food wasn't really the problem. They were hungry for answers, about the pot, about the strange way life had always seemed to trip them just before the finish line. After clearing the dishes, they gathered in the living room. Aunty Bose came out from her room, holding a cup of warm tea in her hand. She didn't sit right away. She walked slowly to the window, looked outside, then finally turned back to face them. "What I'm about to tell you," she began, "is a story that has lived in this family for many, many years. A story that was passed down, like the pot itself. Long ago," Aunty Bose said, "there lived a wealthy farmer in a village not too far from here. His name has been lost with time, but everyone remembered how rich he was. He had acres of land, many cows and goats, barns full of yams and grains, and servants to tend to his fields. But more than all his wealth, people talked about his wives. He had 7 of them." The siblings leaned in closer. The first 6 wives were strong and proud, each competing to win the man's love. But it was his 7th wife, Moradeun, that he loved the most. She was gentle, kind, and beautiful. Her love for her husband was honest and pure. He adored her and didn't hide it. He spoke of her in front of the others, took her hand in front of them, and even bought her gifts, gifts he had never given to any of his other wives. He admired her strength, her calmness, and the way she always carried herself with grace, no matter the insults thrown her way. And the other wives, they hated her for it. They mocked her, laughed at her behind her back, and the worst part, Moradeun had no child. Years passed, and still she remained without one. The other wives never let her forget it. They made cruel jokes, telling her she would never know the joy of motherhood, and whispered that she had used her womb to trap their husband's love, that she had traded her ability to have children for beauty and favor. The pain cut deep, but Moradeun never answered back. She stayed silent, her tears falling in private, her heart heavy with a grief she could not express. Aunty Bose's voice softened. One day, as Moradeun walked by the other wives, she heard them laughing under the shade of a tree. They made fun of her for walking alone, carrying her pot to the stream. Moradeun's heart sank, but she didn't reply. She just kept walking, with tears rolling down her cheeks as she clutched her clay pot tightly, feeling the weight of their words in every step. As Moradeun walked to the stream, she thought to herself, maybe they're right. Maybe I was never meant to be a mother. Maybe I failed him. The thoughts echoed in her mind, each step feeling heavier than the last. Aunty Bose paused and took a deep breath. When Moradeun reached the stream, the forest was quiet. She knelt down, ready to fill her pot with water. And that's when something strange happened. The siblings leaned forward, hanging on her every word. The moment she dipped the pot into the water, the wind stirred the trees. The pot slipped from her hands, sinking slowly into the water. Her eyes widened in shock, and she reached out, trying to grab it, but it was too late. And then, as if the water itself had answered her, a new pot emerged from the stream. It was glowing softly, already filled with clean, fresh water. Moradeun stared, her mouth slightly open in disbelief. She reached out, her fingers trembling as she picked it up. It was warm, unlike any pot she had ever held before. And then, from the stream, a spirit appeared. Dupe's eyes widened. A spirit? Aunty Bose nodded. A tall, glowing figure with eyes like light and a voice like the wind. It spoke softly, yet the words carried a power that made her heart race. Moradeun, the spirit said, you have suffered in silence. Your heart is pure, and your pain has reached me. This pot is my gift to you. So long as you keep it filled with water and never let it run dry, your womb will open and your life will change. The spirit continued, the pot is not just for you. You must pass it on to your child, and they will pass it on to theirs. This pot carries blessings, prosperity, peace, and children, but only if it is respected. Moradeun nodded, tears in her eyes. Thank you, she whispered, her voice trembling. She walked home, feeling a strange sense of peace. When she reached her husband, she told him everything. The spirit, the pot, the promise. Her voice trembled as she spoke, but she could not hide the hope in her heart. The other wives could only watch in silence as Moradeun's body changed, and she began to show the signs of pregnancy. And soon, Moradeun gave birth. Not to one child, but to many. Her children grew strong, and the family's wealth grew even greater. Aunty Bose paused, her voice low. From that moment on, Moradeun's life changed, and so did the lives of all who came from her. Sade blinked, still trying to process everything. And the pot? Was it the same one in our kitchen? Aunty Bose nodded. Yes, it has been passed down since Moradeun, from mother to child, from your great-grandmother to your grandmother to your mother. It came with blessings, but only if the rules were followed. When it is broken or left dry, trouble begins to follow. Now, the strange struggles in their lives didn't feel so random anymore. What do we do now? Kunle asked, breaking the silence. We broke the pot, Dupe said quietly. And now we're paying the price. But there has to be a way to fix it, right? Sade looked at Aunty Bose. You said the pot brought blessings. If the spirit is angry, maybe she can forgive us? Aunty Bose was quiet for a moment, her eyes distant. Then she nodded slowly. Yes, but we can't guess what the spirit wants. We need guidance. We need someone who can speak to her. You mean, like a priest? Tunde asked. She sighed. Yes, Tunde, a priest. Someone who can speak beyond what we see. Baba Olumide. He lives here in this village. In this village? Tunde asked with surprise. I didn't even know we had an Efa priest. He's old now, Auntie said. Quiet and not as active as before. But he still sees things. He still speaks to the spirit world. Your mother once went to him when things were hard. He helped her. That was enough. No one needed more convincing. The night had been long. None of the siblings had slept well. Morning came, and they left the house together, walking in silence, past the market square and along the narrow paths that wound between the trees. Baba Olumide's compound sat at the far end of the village, near the bush path that led to a stream. It was a small house, old and covered in climbing vines, but the compound was clean, carefully kept. Palm fronds hung at the entrance, and chalk lines marked the ground like quiet warnings. Aunty Bose stepped forward and knocked. Baba Efa, she called. Please, we need your help. A low voice answered from within. Enter. Inside the small room, the air smelled of herbs, wood smoke, and ancient prayers. On the ground were markings drawn in white chalk, and in the center sat a mat with a small calabash, cowries, and wooden carvings. He was an old man, skin dark and lined with age, but his eyes were sharp and clear. Speak, he said simply. Aunty Bose told the story about Moradeun, the clay pot, and the strange misfortunes that had followed since. He said nothing at first. Then, slowly, he reached for his divination tools. He began to chant softly, calling the names of ancient spirits. The cowries rattled. His hands moved with practiced ease, eyes closed. A hush fell across the room. Then Baba Olumide's body stilled. When he opened his mouth, his voice had changed. The one who gave is wounded. She was honored once, respected, remembered, but now her gift was broken, left behind like nothing, and so she turned her face away. Tunde leaned forward. Please, is there anything we can do? The priest was quiet for a long time. Then he nodded. Yes, but the path to peace is not in words. It is in action. They listened closely. You must go to the stream again, but not empty-handed. Take a new clay pot, one that has never been used. Let it be clean and simple, no decoration. Carry it to the water, fill it with the stream's blessing, and bring it back to your mother's house. Place it where the old pot used to sit, and keep it full. Do not let it go dry even for one day. Show the spirit that you remember, and that you honor the gift. How will we know if it worked? Dupe asked. He looked at her. If the spirit forgives you, the rain will come. But not just any rain, a special rain that falls only on your family house. That will be your sign. The siblings thanked him and stepped out into the warm afternoon. The first step was to find a new pot. They made their way to the potter's workshop on the outskirts of the village. His workshop was simple, built from mud bricks and shaded by a large tree. When the potter saw them approaching, he paused his work and wiped his hands on a cloth. Can I help you? He asked. Tunde stepped forward. We need a pot, a good one. The potter nodded and stood up, leading them toward the back of his workshop. Shelves lined with pots of all shapes and sizes surrounded them, each one unique in its design and texture. These are the ones I've made. Choose the one you need, he said simply, his eyes scanning the siblings' faces. The siblings moved between the shelves, picking up pots, feeling their weight and texture. Finally, Kunle found a pot that felt right. It was sturdy, with a deep base, and it seemed perfect for their purpose. He held it up and nodded. This one. They paid for the pot, and with the new vessel in hand, they began the next part of their journey, the trek to the stream that ran through the village, a place that had been part of their family's history for generations. The path to the stream was unfamiliar to them. As children, they'd never come here. It was a part of the village they hadn't explored. Aunty Bose, with a steady pace, led the way. After a while, they reached the edge of the stream. The water was cool and clear, flowing through the rocks with a soft, steady flow. Tunde knelt down, dipping the pot into the stream. The cool liquid filled it quickly, the stream flowing gently over the clay. He lifted the pot carefully and felt the weight of the water settle within. They returned to the house, their steps quick but careful, carrying the full pot with them. They entered the kitchen and placed the new pot where the old one had once stood. Evening had fallen, and the house was quiet again. After placing the new clay pot carefully in the same spot where the old one used to be, the siblings cleaned the house from top to bottom. They didn't say much as they gathered in the living room. Everyone was tired and waiting. Sade leaned against the arm of the chair. "Do you think this worked?" she asked. Before anyone could answer, a loud crack of thunder rumbled through the walls. They all froze. Then came the rain. Heavy, sudden, fast. The sound of it hitting the roof was loud and clear. Kunle stood up and rushed to the door. He opened it slowly and stared outside. "You people should come and see this." They all joined him. The rain was falling, but only on their house. The surrounding village remained dry. The street, the trees, even the neighbor's roof had no sign of water. "It's just us," Kunle whispered. Aunty Bose nodded behind them. "The spirit has accepted your apology," she said. Later that night, they gathered around the table once more, this time with steaming plates of jollof rice and fried plantains. For the first time since they all arrived, laughter filled the room. The next morning, the siblings woke up early. One by one, they picked up their bags and stepped outside. There were no strange delays, no bad feelings, just peace. Their journeys back to the city went smoothly. No bus breakdowns, no bad news, no setbacks. In the days that followed, their lives began to change. Shadi got a better job. Dupe paid off her debts. Kunle's sales grew. Tunde found peace. They stayed in touch more often. And back at the house, the pot was never left dry again. The bad luck had ended. Life was no longer a struggle. They were finally free.